Welcome to the Encore Audio Archives YouTube channel. I'm Taper Dave, and this is my channel. I've uploaded hundreds of talks here that I've recorded at meetings in West LA, and I've also recorded conventions starting in 2013. I've got a bunch of those up. And Walt and Mary Murray, the original owners of Encore Audio Archives, started the company in the 80s, and Walt recorded Joe and Charlie's and a bunch of stuff down in Vista, California. My sobriety date is June 20th of 1994. I hope you find something you like, so please like and subscribe to my channel and comment down below. If you want to hear something that I don't have or that you don't see, I'll see that I get it. Anyways, take care and have a great day if you want to.
My name is Clancy Imislund, and I'm an alcoholic. I'm very glad to be here tonight. This is my 14th trip down here for this meeting. You'd think it'd be only 13 on 13 years anniversary. How could that be 14? I don't know. I can't possibly explain it to you, but I'll try. The first night was once. At the end of the first anniversary was the second time, see? And you blink your eyes if you hear me at all. Just Los Angeles, some bitch. I am glad to be here tonight, glad to be safe and sane and sober. I've had a kind of a full AA day. This morning I was at an AA meeting on the outskirts of Phoenix. And this afternoon I was at an AA birthday party in Santa Monica for someone's birthday, and came down here tonight. And some of you know, some of you don't know and don't even care, but those the few of you who do know that I've had a little run of difficulty. I have a baby living in this area who finds it inconvenient to attend the meetings I speak at down here. So tonight I came by her home and put a handcuffs on her and brought her along. Now she has to, nice to have you here, Carol. God bless you and your wonderful work. Here comes Peter the brown noser. Okay, Peter, you don't have to go to meetings again next week. We have a lot of new people here tonight. A lot of people are early. I want to, incidentally, in passing, I almost forgot to do this. I want to commend Tom, because I really do, seriously, because he worked very hard to get this meeting started, and he overcame some rather severe obstacles, and he has served as an advisor to keep it going year after year. And most successful meetings need that, especially in metropolitan areas, because they don't have some advisor. They keep wondering why we should do it this way, and they keep changing it, and pretty soon the meeting is out of existence. That's happened to an amazingly large number of meetings that used to be big and significant and are now nothing and gone. But I want to welcome the new people here tonight. There's a saying in AA that you are the most important people in the room. I want to tell you that is not quite correct. You are the second most important person in the room. Because if I'm out here, I don't care who is here. Because if I'm out here, I might be on my way out. And after me, you are second. I hope everybody else feels the same way. Because without me, I know the stars don't go out if I get drunk and die, but to me they do. And all I've got is me to... it's an interesting thing that because most of us have had difficulty coming here. Some of us have had difficulty staying here. I had a great deal of difficulty staying here because even though I had many of the symptoms that they talked about, I had a number of symptoms that they didn't talk about. So I knew that there was something different in my case. They talked about drinking too much, and I did drink too much. They talked about getting sober and feeling better, and that was not correct for me. When I got sober, I began to feel worse because it became obvious to me I drink because that's what makes me feel better. When I'm sober is when it gets bad. That's why I always, although I don't suppose I ever phrased it in so many words, I think it's safe to say that somewhere deep inside of me, my subconscious thought was, we don't mind you counting your money, but keep the change quiet, for Christ's sake. I meant to throw the money changers out of the temple. I forgot. Well, I do it every time I come here to Jerusalem. On Good Friday, I'm coming in riding Barney Morris. Anyway, I'm sorry, didn't mean. I meant Palm Sunday anyway. But the thing that stuck in my mind was this: alcoholics are people whose problem primarily is alcohol. And when I was a young man, I was sent to AA because I had a problem with alcohol. But it became quite obvious to me what Alcoholics Anonymous is. There's nothing very secret about it if you're new. It's quite obvious. You know it for 2 or 3 meetings. AA is the place where people go whose problem is alcohol. They come here and they get sober and they feel better. And then they, after a while, feeling better, they return to God, find some deal there, and then they spend much of their ensuing years showing their gratitude by helping others to achieve the same thing. And that's a wonderful thing, I always felt. But it has nothing to do with people like me. For a number of reasons. My number one problem is not really alcohol. That's the number one problem you can see, because you can see it and smell it. But that isn't my number one problem. My number one problem is sometimes it's not feeling good enough. Sometimes it's fear. Sometimes it's feeling that people don't like me enough. Sometimes it's feeling that I don't fit in. Sometimes it's feeling that I've been victimized by life. Sometimes it's a feeling that I'm too sensitive. I have a lot of things that come around like a wheel. And I discovered as a young man that having a few drinks makes that better. And sometimes I drink too much. And then well-meaning people think I have a drinking problem. And they send me to places like AA. And I've been to AA, went to AA a lot. And when I'm there, I hear people talk. I know their rights. I failed in AA meetings all over the country for the same reason. I am not like these people. I wish I were. I almost envy them. But I heard meetings in Chicago and Dallas and San Francisco, all places I was living. Yes, I drank too much, and I came to AA, and I got sober, and I've returned to God, and I found a new life, and it's working out well. I'm getting along with my family now, and my job is doing well, and so on. And I know they weren't lying. They were telling the truth. But it had no application to me, because unfortunately, when I get sober, and I try to stay sober a while, it gets so bad I can hardly stand it. The only time I ever really made a concerted effort to stay sober, we were talking about it in the car on the way down, and I've talked about it many times before. I was in Texas, and I was feeling very badly because in a previous city where I'd lived and worked, I'd got arrested one night for fighting with a plainclothes cop, and they put me in jail overnight. And that night, the next morning, my dad had to come down in the morning at 6 o'clock. I thought he was going to come down and tell me I'd been a bad boy. But he said, "Did you have a good time last night while you were out drunk, son?" And I said, "No, Dad, I really didn't. But it isn't going to happen anymore. I'll tell you, it's just a bum deal. It's just a funny thing." He says, "I hope you had a good time, because while you're out drunk, your little boy died, and we couldn't find you." And I felt so bad about that. And he said, "I really don't even want to talk to you anymore." And he turned around and walked out. And I can't imagine ever feeling any worse. And I was trying to think of something to say. And I hollered at him the one thing that I've been hollering all my life to people. And it's really true. I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. That's the story of my life. I didn't mean to. I never did mean to. That had made me feel so bad that when I was working in a different city in Texas, and my family came in, my wife and children, and my drinking was getting a little bad, and I vowed to not ever have this happen again. So I went on the wagon. I went to a few AA meetings, but I hated them because they were the same nice people, but nothing to do with me. And I was reading some books, and I'd been in psychoanalysis, and I loved my children, but when I'm on the wagon like that for a while, just their normal tone of voice begins to be grating, and they're hollering and running through the house and noise, and I didn't like Texas, and it's hot and sand in the air blowing and people talking funny, and working for people who were just seemed to me to be real jerks and living next door to jerks and sober. And I needed to drink so bad I could scream, but I wasn't going to drink because I took a vow in my son's casket. I would never do that again. And one day I just couldn't stand it. My wife took the children and went to church, as they often did. I didn't, but they did. And I could not stand it. I just pulled the car in the garage, shut the door, and hooked up a little hose on the exhaust, turned the motor, and went to sleep and died. I could not conceive. I couldn't hurt any worse. And I was feeling guilty. I was feeling guilty about my son. I was feeling guilty about another city that I lived in. Again, we were talking about that in the car, where I was working for Fairbanks Morse in their advertising department. I was trying to make another new start. I was always making new starts. And in this town, I went to a market one day, and I was just coming off another quiet weekend drunk, and I could handle that. And I went to the market. I said to some clerk there, I said, "What is this cheese?" Pardon me. He says, "Is this cheese any good?" He says that, "I think you'll find it has a quiet authority." What the hell is this clerk talking like that for? So I got talking to him. Turned out he had just left the University of Wisconsin, where he'd been advised to take a leave of absence because he was in medical school and he'd been caught in a homosexual situation. In those days, they made you leave medical school. And we got talking quite a bit, and we got to be kind of friends, and I read him over my house, and we took a little deal if we're going to help each other, because we both were well-read, we both had some mutual interest. I was going to help him be straight, because he didn't like the homosexual life. I mean, he didn't like what was happening to him, and he was going to help me not drink. When I felt like drinking, I'd call him up, we'd go to the show or do something, and if he had this homosexual urge over, he'd call me up and we'd go do something just to occupy our mind. So we would go to the show or do something. And also I directed him in a play, and I worked out a deal where over a period of time, I got him laid by the leading lady. And I felt he's on his way. And one day I didn't realize that it must always happen. One day I had a few drinks. I didn't feel like calling anybody. I felt kind of depressed, so I had a few drinks. I think nobody will know. And when I had a few drinks, I had a few more, and pretty soon I was drunk, and pretty soon I was home, and pretty soon I was feeling bad and guilty. My wife said, "Oh, how could you?" And I was throwing furniture and, "Leave me alone, you bitch, it's your fault anyway." And just terrible. And somebody said, "Oh, get a hold of Bob. Maybe Bob can do something with him." So Bob came over, and he came in the door. I remember this so clearly. And he had that look of disappointment. I'm so sick of looking at that look of disappointment on people's faces. People looking at me as, "Oh, how could you?" You know, that look. And it made me feel so bad I had to lash out at him. I didn't mean to, but I didn't mean to, When I screamed at him in front of all these people, I said, "Get that damn queer out of my house. I got children living here. I don't want that queer around my kids." And he just looked like I had struck him, and he left. And I felt bad. I woke up the next morning and thought, "Oh, God, I shouldn't have done that. That really was a terrible thing to do. I'm so sorry." And his mother called me and said, "What happened last night?" I said, "Oh, nothing much." I didn't know what to say. She said, "Something must have happened. Bob came home and committed suicide." And I thought, "Oh, Jesus." And a couple of days later, I just left all my money with my family and hitchhiked to San Francisco. I just didn't know what to do. I just seemed like everything I touched just turns to crap. And guilt, and fear, and despair. And when I went to psychoanalysis, I did a lot of things, but there's something different about me. And the number one reason is always the same. I didn't mean to. I really didn't mean to. I wouldn't want it to happen. But in Texas, I put that hose on the car and went to sleep and died. And a neighbor was watching this, I guess, and he noticed I didn't come out, and he came over and kicked down the door, and I was briefly dead in there. They put me outside and beat on my chest and breathed in my mouth and got an ambulance. They rushed me to the hospital and oxygenated me and gave me some stuff and talked to me and determined I was mentally ill and moved me to a locked ward where they examined me some more and determined I was a schizophrenic, at least a dual personality with paranoid tendencies, and committed me for an indefinite period up to the rest of my life in the Texas State Insane Asylum at Big Spring, Texas. Now that's how I get when I stay sober, folks. That is not what I'm looking for, really. I know AA means well, but that's not for me. I should say in passing, people sometimes say, you always talk about going to the nut house. How come you're not still there? Well, I'll tell you what. When I was there about 2 weeks, I was feeling better. I thought to myself, Jesus, I'm feeling better now, so I feel a little better. I shouldn't be in here with, $60 a month redneck attendance on the ward and a bunch of crazy people. I thought I should be out of here. So I figured if I'm smart enough, I should be out of here. I'm smarter than all of them put together. So in about a week after that, I found a way to get through a door and across a yard and over the fence, and I was free. I was loose in West Texas. And they had told me this was an escape-proof hospital. I thought, well, maybe it is for redneck Texas pukes, but not for Sam Slick from Slickville, Wisconsin. And I got over that fence, and I suddenly realized it is an escape-proof hospital, but you don't know till you get out. And all of a sudden you realize they can see you running for 3 days. And you feel like such a dummy out there in your bathrobe, just... And it's just a matter of time till the field glasses pick you up. Why, there goes that little Yankee sumbitch now. And they snatched me back and they gave me an autumn full of electric shock treatments for that run. And when you've had an autumn full of electric shock treatments, you never run much after that. You kind of move slowly from place to place. You happen to remember my name, partner? Is it property of the state of Texas? Oh. And the things I've just told you, I don't remember at all. I heard about it because we had a lot of shock treatments. It knocks out your memory for quite a period. When I came out of those shock treatments, I remember that vaguely. I was on a porch, and I looked at these people around me little by little, day after day. I thought, how sickening. Odd-looking people, empty-eyed, with a bib where they drilled on, and they just walked to the wall and would turn around and come back. And one day I looked down, and I had a bib with drool on mine, boy. And I thought, Jesus. So I thought, I don't know where I am exactly. I said, where am I? You're in the Texas State Hospital. And the last I remember was living in San Francisco. I didn't remember any of this stuff. But I finally decided I better get out of there, and I became just a wonderful patient. Whatever they said, I did it, And little by little, I worked my way up to being kind of a semi-trustee. I got moved to the senile ward. And I was only 29, so I was... But that's what they do with the shock treatment, because you fit right in. How are you? I'm fine. How are you? Fine. And every time I started to make progress, one of these stupid attendants would say something that would offend me, and I'd have to lash out at them and to put mark. They had the power of life and death. If you ever saw one mark flew over the cuckoo nest, that was a modern version of it. But this was old-fashioned, old red kid. Some lousy little son of a bitch who had a bad night said, this patient is disturbed. I move you right back into a locked ward. No hearing, no nothing. Just that crazy little son of a bitch can do that. And I didn't know what to do. But my memory was coming back. And I remembered moving to Texas. I remembered being on the faculty of the University of Texas, vaguely. And they started while I was there, early in 1957. They started an experiment in the state of Texas. Some guy that lived in Big Spring, Texas, named Les Ross, was an AA member. He thought some of these people in the hospital should be getting some help from AA, but they didn't want to hear about it. So he volunteered. He said, give me a half award. I'll work with alcohol. I'll do it myself without pay. And after much thought, they decided to do it. So they let him have an experimental half award with another AA that helped him. They had a policy where that for a while, all the patients, they'd get 20 people that would be signed in by their family for 30 days. They'd have to sit there and listen to this AA stuff. And I noticed that there was this ward over here about this time where there was some AA going on, and people were coming and going. And I started to remember, God, I've been around AA for years. I know how to act like an alcoholic. I know how to fool these people. So I got I was back in one of my trustee periods again, wandering through the yard. I saw Mr. Ross, and I gave him my newcomer look, which old slippers do. Mr. Ross, I'm here on a suicide commitment, but what these people didn't understand is my problem has always been alcohol. When I'm sober, I do very well, but I have this terrible obsession to drink sometimes. It's almost a terrible craving. I understand you people in your ward have some sort of an answer for this. Do you have any kind of any literature or any meetings I could attend? I'm willing to go to any length so I could just find an answer. And poor Mr. Ross, his eyes went. He had never seen a sincere newcomer, These he says, I'll get back to you, boy. And he went away. I never heard any more from him. I thought 3-4 days. I thought, that son of a bitch has burned me off. But he came back and said, okay, boy, you can go to our ward, Ward 9. I asked him later why it was that he took him so long. He said, well, he had to go through Austin because I became the experimental study in the state of Texas whether or not a psychopathic patient should be allowed in with alcoholics. So there are two different programs. And I went in there, and I'll tell you, I was the best patient they ever had in that ward. Tell us some more, Mr. Ross. And he'd give us lectures. He'd get all 25 of us in there. He'd give us a lecture on the 12 steps for an hour. Nobody in their right mind in Texas wanted to hear about the 12 steps, and especially not for an hour. And oh, jeez. But I knew I had to be simulated interest. He'd get all that. You boys have any questions? Nobody had any questions. He said, how do you get out of here, Tell me, Mr. Ross, could you tell us more about the fourth step, how we reach down and get some of that garbage inside of us and pull it out and view it in public, and how we get rid of it in the ensuing steps? He said, I can tell you about that, Clancy. Thanks for asking. And the whole room around me would say, oh, shit. But I didn't care about them. I had to get him. And I got to be secretary of the group because they all went home after 30 days, and I was the only one who had any time. They were all there for 30-day commitments. It's really kind of funny. Not much sincerity. You sit next to a guy to me and say, what are you going to do when you get out of here, Fred? I'm going to kill that bitch. But finally, I got to be his fair-haired boy. He used to start sending me out of there to Big Spring and to Odessa and Midland and San Angelo. A couple guys from the AA would take me down there, and I'd give little talks at their AA meetings. I developed a wonderful little talk, Friends, I'm here on behalf of my fellow patients from Big Spring State Hospital. I want to thank you all for the wonderful God-given work you've done to change our lives. It's as though we were going across a vast desert of alcoholism. And we came to the tall green hills of sobriety, and they were too steep for our legs. We didn't know where to go, but people such as you said, over here there are 12 golden steps that you can climb to the hill of sobriety. And over here. And we came to those steps now. Most of us are climbing those steps, looking forward to returning to our home throughout Texas and sharing and finding other people lost in this vast desert and saying to them, over here, over here. And it's all because of wonderful people like you. And on behalf of my fellow patients, may God bless you in your wonderful work. Thank you. Now, you can laugh, but that got me out of the Texas nut house. And the funny thing is this. I never had another drink till I ran out of Thorazine. But I did have a little vacation in there because of those shock treatments. It did knock out my memory for a while, and it did help me. The full import of my memory didn't come back for a year or two, but people told me about it little by little, and I still haven't remembered. 2 months before I went to the Nut House, I directed a grand opera at the University of Texas, and to this day I don't remember doing it. I got the program. My wife and children tell me about it, but I remember it. I got a record of it once called Mephistopheles by Arrigo Boito, and I played the records. It was just like hearing music across the lake. I recognize little bits here and there, but a lot of the electric shock treatments are pretty sturdy. But I worked very hard then. I went to a different city, and I got my samples together. I'd been a good writer, and as I did again and again, I got still a better job. And I got a job with Tracy Locke, the biggest advertising agency in the South at that time. And some of the guys and I were writing the ads for the Elsie and Elmer campaign. If some of you old people remember that, all these cows talk to each other. And we're doing quite well, and I ran out of Thorazine. I'd been drinking a little bit. My wife was worrying about it, and we had another child, and on, and it all exploded again. And the funny thing, I'll tell you, I don't know if I ever get off. I don't know why I'm off on this subject tonight, but I hadn't thought about this for years. When you got out of the Texas Insane Asylum in those years, my type of commitment, you couldn't get out unless you were signed out to a family member. So my wife signed me out in her care. And I found out later, as she talked about it, every Saturday she had to write a report into the hospital, say how I was doing, whether I was disturbed or how I was doing. And I knew that she was up to something. I knew that she was my parole officer somehow. And I didn't dare offend her because I didn't want any more shock treatments. And it really makes a little tension around the house now. Take this garbage out. Okay. If we ever get out of Texas, I'm going to wring your goddamn neck. But I had a big explosion in Dallas. I got drunk and sick and desperate. My wife, I came home from a weekend. I'd drunk up my severance check from a firm, and she'd taken all the children and the furniture and left. She left my clothes in a pile of this out on Highland Park, lovely little house that we had, and all gone. And when I saw those clothes, I know she has called them up, and they're going to come and get me, and I'll never get out of that house for the rest of my life. So I threw those clothes into a bag that I had, and I got out of Dallas fast. And a few days later, I found myself in the Juarez jail. I'd gone down there when I was living in El Paso. I had some friends down there, and I got in a fight with a guy, and they finally let me out of there. And a week or two after that, I found myself laying on the floor of the Phoenix trunk tank, where I was last night in Phoenix, and thinking about that. And I was so sick, and I'd lost my clothes somewhere, and I had apparently thrown up on some guy's bunk, some trustee's bunk when I was in there. And he was very angry. I woke up and he was kicking me in the face. And he kicked my front teeth out. And I was very glad I'd been in psychoanalysis by that time, because I was almost instantly able to identify his problem. I remember thinking, this son of a bitch is overreacting. And 3 or 4 weeks after that, 2 guys were throwing me out of the midnight mission on Skid Row and saying, "Stay out of here, you damn bum." I tried to explain to them, I'm not a bum. 3 years ago, I was on the faculty of the University of Texas. Ads that I helped write are running this very week in Life and Time and Collier's and Saturday Evening Post. I've had my picture in the New York Times for achievement. How many people do you know have had their picture in the New York Times for achievement? But it's hard to explain these things in midair. And if you have no front teeth, you really don't hit those consonants very cleanly. But I stood outside of the midnight mission early in a cold autumn morning, and as the light rain was falling, and I couldn't imagine, how can this happen to me? I never meant to do anything bad in my life. I never did anything bad intentionally. I mean, try not to be bad sometimes, but really, as far as I can tell, I've always wanted to be a good guy in a good world. And just things were forced on me. And another thing that was going in my mind and went in my mind for years, you might think about this a little bit if it's going in your mind. I had been in psychoanalysis for some time. I'd spent thousands of dollars there. And I had become convinced, maybe rightfully, maybe wrongfully, but I was convinced that I had been victimized by the world. Been victimized by my parents, been victimized especially by my father, been victimized by situations that I should have been nurtured in, that I'd been victimized by things that are beyond my control. Now, why would anybody like something like that? I'll tell you why. It's a very strong truism. One of the great lures of these type of therapies, and there's a lot of them around today who preach the same thing. That's how I've become aware of it, because there's the last 5 or 6 years, America has become almost a victimizationally obsessed place. Incidentally, in passing, I don't know if I mentioned this before or not, but a week and a half ago, 2 weeks ago, I hope if you ever get a chance, get the March 20th edition of the New Yorker magazine. Very slick and very nice magazine, but with an article in there you'd never think to find in the New Yorker in 1,000 years. Big, long article. AA at the crossroads. Can a program that describes and works for self-reliance exist in a society made up of victimization? And it really is a tremendous, they got the history right, they got everything right, it really is tremendous. And victimization has become a very big thing, and the reason it is because victimization, if nothing else, relieves the patient of much of his or her guilt. That's why. Because when it's their fault, it is no longer my fault. They have done this to me. And there's all kinds of programs, inner child and adult child and CODAs and things. And I'm not putting them down at all. Everybody's entitled to do whatever they want to do. But it's the whole victimization therapy. And I was into that as strongly as anybody I ever knew. And there's only one thing wrong with victimization, of course, because you get rid of a lot of guilt. What's wrong with it? Well, because nothing is ever for nothing in this world. There's always a little price tag for everything you get. And the little price tag for victimization, there are 3 little price tags. One, whether you intend to or not, you develop, and people like me develop and sustain and enhance resentments toward the people who did it to me. If you ever go to a meeting of victimization therapy, you will hear no laughter in there. You will hear no, like you hear in an AA meeting, you will hear people sharing stories of how they were hurt almost in a competition to see who got hurt the worst. Like at an AA meeting, sometimes you try to top each other for drinking. And when you go outside of the meeting afterwards, I'll tell you, there's nobody coming out of there laughing with a cup of coffee. They come out of there intense. They have reinforced the pain that they have felt. The second little price tag you pay, whether you intend to or not, you must accept the fact you are now learning that you are terminally different. You will always be different. There's no way out. I never really understood that concept until I heard one of the national leaders of their organization, one of these organizations, describe what it was. And he said, it's almost as though we were trees. When we were saplings, unfeeling hands warped us and bent us. It didn't kill us, and we grew to maturity, and we're full trees, but we're bent and warped, and nothing we can do now can ever change it back. It's not funny at all, because people are dying from it. But because they believe there's no help for me, because I've been warped so badly, there's no help. And the third little price tag, is our starting time inconvenient? I don't want you to miss anything. Chapter 5, how it works. I never used to be this way till I was victimized. Their fault. Their fault. And the third little price tag you got to pay is this. It's quite obvious. For people like me, and I presume like most of you, intermittent but intense self-pity. I could have been something if only I'd have been treated right. If they hadn't screwed me around, if I'd had the breaks, if I'd had Life, it just becomes a series of misunderstandings and bad breaks. And it's not my fault. And I stood outside of that mission. And as I said, if someone said, you know, you've been in and out of AA now for almost 10 years. You've lost everything. You've lost your home, your wife, your family, your front teeth. You know, you can get new families and homes and jobs, but like our book says, we are like men who have lost their front teeth. They never grow new ones. Or whatever it says, I don't know what it says. If any of you are new and have lost some teeth, let me give you some hope. Once you become spiritually perfect, they grow back. Have your sponsor explain that to you tonight. But if someone would have said, you know, you're dying on the street, Slim, everything is gone, could you consider you might be an alcoholic? And if my life depended on it, as it did, I would have had to say, but I'm not. You don't understand. I am not really an alcoholic. There's something terribly wrong with me, but my problems are much worse than drinking. Drinking is the solution, and now drinking has become a problem, and it's a bad problem. But nobody seems to understand. Getting rid of drinking intensifies it. Eventually makes me suicidal. And I had no idea that there was any kind of a name for my condition. And I walked out to... It was raining. I wanted to get off the street. So I walked 71 blocks out to the corner in Wilshire and Fairfax. It's a funny thing. Suicidally prone people, I've noticed this many times in my life. People like me, and maybe some of you, I want to commit suicide, but God damn it, I won't let you kill me. You know, I'll get on my feet and kill myself. Leave me alone, you know. I could have died on the street, but I didn't want to do that, so I wanted to walk out so I could get in shape to kill myself, I guess. And I walked 71 blocks out to the corner of Wilshire and Fairfax, where there's a little AA club that I'd been asked to leave a week before for being in there drunk and fighting with some old bag named Janet Newstead. I don't know how I remember her name. It's only been 36 years. And I didn't intend to stay sober. I didn't know what to do. I had to get off the street. I saw my friend Kenny here tonight. Kenny's the only one in this room that was in the 6300 Club at that time. And you remember I didn't have front teeth, don't you, Kenny? And you ridiculed me, didn't you, you son of a bitch? Oh. But I forgive and forget is my motto. But Kenny was a little ahead of me in sobriety, and I was resenting him for that too. And he had a job, and he looked good, and I hated him. But anyway, that's right. Did you get drunk? Well, I know, but that's for being mean to me. God punished you. I would suggest you don't cross me. But a lot of people got drunk. I got drunk a lot. The important thing is we are sitting in this room tonight sober. And now it's been, I had no intention of staying sober then. I didn't want to stay sober because you don't have me when I get sober. I went up suicidal. There was nothing going for me. My kids were gone. I'd never see them again. My wife was gone. I didn't care about that too much. My parents would not accept a collect phone call from me. I'd been something, and I couldn't think of anybody who gave a damn whether I lived or died. I'm sure there were people, but I didn't know who they were. And I don't know what to... I'm sure that, as I've said many times, every long-term slipper that ever stays sober looks back and wonders what was different this time. What was different this time? I didn't want to stay sober. I didn't want what they had. To me, AA, I know all about AA. I'd read the book. I'd been around. I'd had sponsors over the years. I've lived in different cities. I know that AA is a nice place. But it has nothing to do with me. It's something with people with my type of emotions, my type of history, and my type of victimization, if you will. And I didn't know what to do. And all I remember was that the relief I'd ever had in the world was from drinking and controlling it. And I guess that's, if you're kind of new, you may wonder, what do you have in common with me or these people? Not that you've been in the nut house, or not that you've been in the jails, or not that you've been your front teeth kicked out. That's not it. A couple of things we have in common. I think one of the great things most of us have in common, we all come here feeling that our case is different for our own reasons. Secondly, if you be an alcoholic, I think it's safe to say that you probably have spent some time recently if you're still new off the booze, trying to do something that we can laugh at now, but is the most serious thing in the world. Trying to find some combination of things so that I can control and enjoy my drinking. The book in chapter 3 talks about that specifically. I heard it 100 times, never paid attention to it. The great obsession of every abnormal drinker is that someday, somehow, he will control and enjoy his drinking. And it goes on to say the persistence of this illusion is astonishing. Why not? Because we never realize two things are happening. One, I get an abnormal reaction to alcohol. I never knew that. I never knew anybody who told me about it, and you don't know it either. That the feelings you get when you drink alcohol don't happen to most people. That's why they're not alcoholics. But nobody knows that until you get here a while and you understand it. The abnormal reaction to alcohol, this allergy of the body, is that alcohol has to do something wonderful for you that it doesn't do for most people. If it doesn't do that, you'll never drink enough of it to have any problems. If you like ice cream and it starts to make you sick, you stop eating ice cream. If you like alcohol and it makes you sick, you try to find a way to drink more alcohol to get over being sick. Why is that? That's why people can't understand that. People who don't have the same reaction you and I have look at people like and say, what in the hell's wrong with you? And it's just like that kind of funny example they give in this book, but to other people it looks the same. This one of my favorite all-time men, this guy in the book who's a jaywalker. He jaywalks, he gets hit by a car. And his people say, well, why don't you knock off jaywalking? He said, no, well, I'll see about that. And then a few weeks later, here comes the bus. He said, I can beat that goddamn bus. Boom, he gets hit again. He breaks his leg. And he said, boy, I've learned my lesson. And the next time you look, a month later, he's zipping kitty corner across the corner, and two cars hit him. And after a while, you say, what's wrong with you? And that's exactly how people look at us who don't have that feeling. Why are you drinking? Look, I have a drink once in a while too, but I don't get drunk and crazy, for Christ's sake. Think of your family. Look at the things you've done wrong already. And they don't realize all that does for me is make me feel bad. And when I feel bad, I have to drink to feel better. People like us do something you'd never guess, except in retrospect. You drink to forget you're drinking. You don't really drink to forget you're drinking. Drinking makes you feel bad, and you drink to get over feeling bad. So you wind up, but nobody ever knows that when you're in the middle of it. All you know is, God damn it, leave me alone. Get out of my face. And never knowing that all you know is one thing. They don't understand. My case is different. So we have this tremendous obsession. Someday I'll control and enjoy my drinking. Never once guessing if alcohol, the reason I'm drinking is it does these things for me. If it does it for me, I will never in my life be able to control and enjoy my drinking on a continuing basis. I may be able to briefly control it, in which case I won't be able to enjoy it. I may enjoy it, but I sure as hell can't control it then. I can control it or enjoy it, but I cannot control and enjoy it. In chapter 3, the other little paragraph we read sometimes, it sounds so funny, people like me never think it applies to me, but it's the story of my life and I presume of yours. Things that people like you and I do. Change from scotch to brandy or something else. Drinking beer only. Drinking only at home. Never drinking at home. Taking physical exercise. Reading spiritual literature. Making vows. All sorts of things. On and on. Taking trips. Not taking a trip. On and on and on. There's a whole long paragraph and we laugh. Isn't that funny? But it's not funny because we've all done it. Or variations thereof. Why do people do that? Because you finally get into a situation where your answer has become a problem, but the original problem is still there. You can't drink and you can't stay sober. And you got to find a way to find a combination that'll get me some relief without making me get in trouble. And people like you and I have spent a lot of time looking for that finding ways, going to reading books, all these things that people do. Changing towns, taking geographical cures to other cities, changing my life, doing all sorts of things. And it all works for a little while. But one day, you could be lying in bed, 2 in the morning. You can't get to sleep one more morning. The irritability and nervousness is back that comes to staying sober. And here come to the door, here come your old pals. Hi, I've been looking for you. And then comes resentment and feelings of difference and feelings of loneliness and feelings of victimization. And they come and sit on the edge of your bed, and then it ain't going to be long after that, boy. And the day has to come for people like me, and I presume like you, or else you would be in this room. I need booze, or give me alcohol. But it's just, what's the use? What's the use? I've tried, and nobody cares. Nobody gives a shit. I can try so hard, and people just screw me around. And at least this time I'll watch it. At the beginning and the end. And sometimes if you're flamboyant like me, you may wind up in court. Sometimes people don't. If we wind up in court, somebody says to me, why did you act like that? And for the life of me, I can't imagine why I did. All I can say is, I didn't mean to. I didn't mean to. And being sober isn't going to cure that. Being sober just puts you back with the abscessed wisdom tooth you were trying to get away from in the first place. The abscessed wisdom tooth of the mind, the brain. And that's why it's kind of amazing to look back now to think, there's not much chance for people like me. I wouldn't bet a nickel on them. Here. If Clancy Imislund, circa 1958 October, came to my office today, and I deal with a lot of people who have a lot of problems. But if he came to me, I would not know how to treat them. I would not know how to treat him. Because not only is he a loser, but he's got a smart mouth, and he's an imitation intellectual, and he's a supercilious, wise guy to disguise his own fear. And when a guy has been wise, given a bunch of shit long enough, you just say, okay, if you know so much, go on your own, leave me alone. How would you help such a guy? I wouldn't know how to help such a guy, I don't think. Because how do people go from being slippers into staying sober? How did I go from being a person that know almost as much about AA then as I know now, intellectually, and I could not stay sober? And here I've been sober 36 and a half years. How do you do that? I wish I had an answer for that, because of my past as a slipper, people refer troubled cases to me. People come from sometimes all over the country. Say, well, go to Clancy, see the goddamn Clancy. Buy him a one-way ticket, you know. A couple times over the years, not much lately, but a few years ago, I was younger and more lively. A couple times I've gone to the door at 1 o'clock, 2 o'clock in the morning when the doorbell rang, and there's some boob there. They said you'd help me. I said, who said they'd help you? He points, and on the other side of the park, there's a car speeding away at What's his name? Wouldn't tell me. I was out dusting the street for tire prints the next day. But I don't have any magic answer for long-term slippers. If I did, I'd be so glad. But there's no way to help a long-term slipper that I know of. I cannot give him the sense of being sober. Because what's got to happen is this. You've got to somehow find a way to stay here a while, and one day something strange happens. One day, out of nowhere, all this mishmash you're going through and phoniness and pretending to get along and hate everything, one day something happens. You think, Jesus, maybe I can stay sober. Nothing good has happened. It's just, maybe I can stay sober. Now, you may not, and maybe you throw that feeling away. But that feeling has to be established somewhere along the way. The question is, how do you get to that feeling? And I would give anything if I could give that feeling to people who could not stay sober. And if I could, I'd make myself $1 trillion. I wouldn't charge for it, of course, but in AA you don't do it. But some people would, and they'd make $1 trillion. In passing, gives me a pain in the ass to watch people who have learned about everything they know about themselves in AA going out giving seminars and charging money for seminars so some newcomer can understand what they learned in AA for nothing. It's a pain in the ass to me, but I don't judge. But I wish I could transmit this, and I can't. And it's an equivalent that I sometimes talk about. It's a much less complex feeling, but it's the same thing. No parent, no matter how much you love your child, no matter if you love your wife or your husband or your child, say your child, if they don't know how to ride a bicycle, you cannot transmit to them the ability to keep their balance on a bicycle. All you can do is put them on the bicycle and maybe run alongside them and say, move your legs and steer, but they fall down because they haven't got any sense of balance. And they cry, oh, bloody nose, oh, geez, I'd give anything if I could transmit this, but you got to try again and you try again. I'm sure most of the people in this room have had that experience, and a long time ago, so long you probably can't remember it. One day, for no apparent reason, you're on the damn bicycle, and all of a sudden, you can keep your balance, and nobody knows how, and nobody knows why, and you can't transmit it to anybody else. But you'll have that feeling as long as you live. You can ride a bicycle for as long as you live, and you can ride a motorcycle if you know how. You can do all sorts of things that a week before you swear, I'll never be able to do it. But you can do it. And in a much more complex way, but it's really the same concept. How can I stay sober? You don't understand. And somehow here, develop at least a transitory feeling that comes little by little. My God, maybe I can stay sober. Now, how do you do that? That's the $64 question. That's the question that's been missing in all efforts to help people like you and me. It's difficult to think that there's been recorded history of people getting an abnormal reaction to alcohol which colors their actions for over 4,000 years. And in 1934, at the beginning of November, there was not a single alcoholic sober on a continuing basis that anybody knew about, except it had some religious experience, and they went to a monastery or something like that. Nobody's on the street. So everything that's happened around here has happened in the last few years. And we think, well, yeah, now we're all sober. But for every person in AA, I think it's safe to say, there's 10 or 15 who have come here and have gotten drunk again, and will never stay sober. After I got sober this time, I became somewhat successful, little by little, very slowly, and I got radio and television. I got some corporations and advertising agencies, and then after a few years, in some sort of hideous fit of do-gooderism, I decided to go down on Skid Row, and I run the Midnight Mission on Skid Row for the last 21 years, the place that threw me out 36 years ago. And people said to me, why do you want to give up your career to work down there? And a very simple reason. I told that son of a bitch when he threw me out, I'll come back and get you someday. I just haven't been able to find him. But I see all kinds of alcoholics, and I see some of them die. People like you and me. There are very, very few alcoholics on Skid Row who have not been to AA. That's why it's very difficult to talk to them about AA, because they already know about it. And all over the world, all sorts of people. But I got a call Friday from somebody his wife and children begged him to please call me. I really don't know how to even take these calls. They said, maybe you could help. And I said, how about going to a meeting with me tonight? I'm supposed to catch a plane tonight, but I'll put it off till tomorrow morning. Let's go to a meeting tonight. He said, oh, no, I don't want to do that. I've been to an AA meeting, and I didn't like it. And it sounds kind of funny, except till he changes it, he's going to die. And he will die convinced that he did everything he could. And he will die convinced he's not really an alcoholic and there's no help in AA. The analogy I've thought about recently, and it's something to remember if you're kind of new around here and you've gone to a few meetings and you don't know what to make of it. It's like an old funny analogy they used years ago about these 4 or 5 blind fellows in India coming upon their first elephant. And one gets hold of the leg and says, I know what an elephant's like. It's like a big trunk of a palm tree. Boy, it's just exactly like it. And another one's got a hold of the ear and says, no, you idiot. It's like a palm frond. It's like a leaf. It's a funny thing. The guy got a hold of the trunk. He says, no, it's like a big cobra. An elephant is like a cobra. I can feel it in my mind. And another got a hold of the tail and says, no, it's like a little piece of rope. Somebody got a hold of the sides. And you guys are, I guess you're joking because it's like a wall. It's an enormous wall. And they are all absolutely correct. And they are all absolutely wrong. And think how often that happens in Alcoholics Anonymous. Somebody comes here and gets hold of an ear and says, that's what AA is. I don't like it, and they never come back. And somebody else gets a hold of a trunk and says, that's what AA is, I don't like it. And somehow, it's so difficult, and it's almost impossible to communicate, that somehow we have to have people find AA. That's one of the great things today, I should say in passing, is that why it is so essential that in our AA meetings, yours and mine, that we talk about AA. Because that's what they're there for. They're not there to hear some goddamn psychobabble that your counselor thought would be cute for you, or it isn't to talk about victimization or coda or anything else. I'm not against these. I'm not against adult children of alcoholics or inner child therapy or any of these things. But if you want those things, go to those meetings. That's where you should go. And I don't anymore want to hear about your inner child in an AA meeting than I would go to their meeting and insist they read chapter 5. Different things. Different things. This is the only thing in history that has worked for alcoholics. And that's why it's so bad and sad to have people here a short time who think Alcoholics Anonymous is like a palm trunk because that's what they've got a hold of. And therefore, we'll deal with it on that basis. We'll just talk about psychobabble. I don't want to talk about the steps. I don't want to hear about this goddamn tradition. That's all corny. Let's talk about the cutting edge of emotions. And it's kind of funny, except people come in and say, shit, that doesn't help me. I had that before. And they go and drink and die. We got it. That's why it is important that you and I must, to the best of our ability, if you have any sobriety at all or any sense of the immediacy of what we're doing here, you must keep your meeting dealing with Alcoholics Anonymous. That's an interesting... In this article in New Yorker, there's a funny thing. We have never sunk to this, but we might. In New Jersey, they describe a meeting where they're so tired of victimization talk that he said they'd attended it, and when someone starts to talk about victimization, the whole rest of the meeting in unison cries out, "Talk shit! Talk about the program!" Now, I wouldn't do that. I'm much too well-bred, but some people would. But that's how you get to be an old fuddy-duddy around here, by watching how the alternative ways fail year after year after year. I came here as a fighting rebel boy, and I was too slick for all these old fools. And now I'm an old fool watching young pukes go down the toilet because they think they're too slick for AA. There is something nice when you're a rebel, though, I must say. It's like standing up to the steamroller of life. I defy you! Ha, 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 ha! I know truth! And your little friends around you, give it to him, Clancy! And it's great till one day the steamroller gets to you and you just... And if you possibly can, you can run in front of it one more time and say, wait a minute, I defy you. And eventually, if you're like me, eventually you find a way to ride on the right front fender and point out defiant people. Here's one over here. But to get this over with, to talk about what is it that you do, I'll tell you what you have to do. I'm going to say a word to you that we've all heard and makes us want to puke. You have to surrender. How do you surrender? What does that mean? I'll tell you how you surrender. Well, some people surrender You know, you hear old-timers sometimes say, I came to this program and I threw in the towel, and now I'm just doing well. And you think, well, not me, dummy. But that isn't the way it is. That's old-timers talk. That isn't the way it really is for people like you and me. What we do is this. We come here and we throw in the towel, perhaps. But as soon as you feel a little bit better, you snatch that baby back. And then you spend the rest of your life smalling off small strips. Is there no end to your goddamn wishes, you know? Because surrender is not a one-time thing for human beings. It may be for Germany and Japan, but it isn't for human beings. I'm not putting it down. I mean, I went over in the Pacific and fought those people, so you'd have the right to boo me. I want to apologize to Japan for dropping the atomic bomb. Otherwise, I'd have been dead on the goddamn beach. Screw them. Anyway, we don't talk about politics in AA. We don't talk about those things. We don't. What I'm saying is this. The surrender that's necessary here is the most difficult surrender you and I will have to make. Because understanding knowledge of this book and many other books will not help you at all. It'll just help you more fully find reasons to describe what happened this time. It turns out that the magic in AA is something that sounds so dumb that you don't even want to think about it. AA, this book, describes the magic word for people like you and me. It isn't love. It isn't spirituality. It isn't involvement. It isn't relationships. There's a magic word. And this book says it in so many words. It says, action is the magic word. You got to act yourself better, which sounds just stupid, because all of us have been conditioned in our lives by every therapy in the world that has always said, you come to us, we will change your thinking, and eventually your actions will get better. And that has never worked for alcoholics ever in all these thousands of years. But people just keep trying it. AA, whether by coincidence or divine intercession or just good luck, came up with a program that said, you come to us, we will change your actions, and eventually your thinking will change. Now, why would that be? Why not just change your thinking? Now, just stop and think about it. Is there anyone in this room who can say that their thinking remains the same no matter what happens? You know, that's one of the things about people like you and me, especially if we're kind of new. Big waves. One day you're up, 2 hours later down. Never know what the hell's going on. Just some days you go to bed feeling good, get in the morning, want to get drunk. There isn't, after all these years, there isn't a person in this room who can guarantee me how they're going to feel when they wake up tomorrow morning. Whether they're going to feel optimistic or cross or crabby or want to get up or not want to get up or what the hell it is. Nobody knows about that thing. That's why what Alcoholics Anonymous says is this. We will give you actions to take. Actions to take on days when you feel like you must get drunk so you won't have to get drunk. We will give you actions to take for those moments when there's no sense to keep going until you get over that feeling of no sense way to keep going. We will give you actions to take when you feel lonely and afraid and want to run away, if you will take the actions. And it boils to how do you know what actions to take? You read the book and decide. You go to some discussion meeting and talk to, I have a problem for all of you. What should I do with my life? And you go around the room and get 30 answers from people who don't know either. Yeah. That is why they have the concept here called sponsorship. That's what sponsors are about. Good sponsors can change your life. That's what saved my life. I got so desperate, I let some old son of a bitch intimidate me into taking actions I didn't believe in. I felt that bad. And little by little, much to my surprise, I stayed sober. I didn't really feel good, but I stayed sober. And little by little, he had me do things I didn't believe in, and little by little, he even had me take some steps. On days I was going to commit suicide. The day I was going to commit suicide is the day he finally got me to write an inventory. I wasn't going to write an inventory. I've taken my inventory with a psychiatrist for years. Why would I take it with a damn sponsor? But he said, it doesn't make any difference, kid. You just got to do it. I said, in my judgment, Bob, that's the last thing in the world I need. I'm so full of guilt and fear now. Going over all that stuff will make me crazy. He says, in your judgment? Who cares about your judgment? You live in the back seat of an abandoned car, for Christ's sake. Who cares about your judgment? If I want your judgment, I'd put my head in the window and ask you for it. He says, you got to surrender your judgment. And little by little, I did these things. And sometimes I almost got drunk. You know, I think that a good example of that, an old analogy, I've thought of for a long time. In the early days of airplanes, when airplanes were very new, really new, shortly after the Wright brothers, you could fly them, and they kind of funny things. But one thing that was inevitably lethal, deadly, if they ever got into a tailspin, there was no way to pull them out. They'd find these guys pulling back on the stick, trying to pull them out, and they'd crash and dead. They'd have to pry their hands off the stick. And there was no known way to pull a plane out of a tailspin. So the answer was, don't get into a tailspin. And one day a guy in Virginia got up to some tremendous height, like 1,500 feet, and he misjudged his climb ratio and got into a tailspin, stalled him into a tailspin. And he tried to pull back on the stick, and he realized, oh, God, I'm never going to pull out of this. And he felt so bad it's going to be a long trip down. So he pushed the stick forward to make the nose go right into the ground. And that day they discovered how to come out of a tailspin. That's still the way they bring jets out of tailspins. If you get in a tailspin, you come out the other way, like that. But it goes against all logic. But at least they know how to pull out of a tailspin. But after that, there were still people dying in tailspins. Because apparently, at least for a while, they were thinking, well, I know the theory is to push the nose forward, but that's shit. I'm going to pull this baby out. And we all know that feeling, you know. We all know A is a wonderful place till you get in a jam yourself. And I haven't got time for theory now, baby. Now, there have been a few times in my life, boy, that I've pushed that stick forward at just the last second. I had grass stains on the top of my head. And that's true of everybody. That's why we get together to reinforce one another, because all by ourselves, there's too many emotions that distort our perception. That's why we have sponsors. That's why we have friends, and we talk to people. And we have people we can call when we don't feel right, so they can call us when they don't feel right. Because it's like a reciprocal, like an 8-cylinder engine. I don't know much about engines. When I look at my engine, it's just startling to me. There's cylinders going up and cylinders going down, and can't possibly work, but somehow pulled that old car down the road at 70 miles an hour. And that's the way it is in AA. Can't possibly work. But when people are going down, there are other people going up, and they pull you up and down, and pull you along. So eventually you get a pattern that works for you. And eventually you get very fortunate, and you get to a position where you're trying to help other people. And don't even want to, but you do it because it makes you look good. And then you discover, my God, I care how that person is. One of the saddest things I know, and it happens to a lot of people, when a person works with someone for the first time, when you work with people, it happens to you sooner or later. When someone you're working with gets drunk, and you think, what did I do wrong? What should I have done? That is really a terrible depression. You don't realize how caught up you are in their recovery until you realize what's happened. And the best way to overcome it is to find somebody else and help them, and on and on. Years ago, when I was working in advertising agencies and helping train people and so on, used to be kind of a 5-point program. Sales managers would give to their salesmen. There are 5 ways to really become a success in the field. And that is when you're learning a subject matter, when you're learning about a new product, a new engine, a new way of doing things. There's a 5-way program that's quite nice. It wasn't a lot around AA once. That really is true in AA too. But in sales, learning salesmanship, they go like this. One is do not argue or be still. In AA, we might change that to shut up. Nobody cares for your opinion. You're a loser. We won't say to you that way. We'll say, put the cotton out of your ears and put it in your mouth, son. Secondly, listen. Now you think, Jesus, I can't help but listen. These people just yammering at me. But of course you can keep them listening. Everybody in this room knows how to do that. It's just like watching it's like having a defense system against missiles. You see the words and thoughts coming, just. I could sit there and nod at my life, but I couldn't tell you what they said. I just want to hear that shit. That's right. Listen. Listen to something in those meetings. Listen to your sponsor. Listen to something that you could identify with. A lot of the stuff will just be crap that you can't understand yet. But you will hear something you can identify with, especially in speakers. Then the third thing is remember. Now that sounds, of course I'm going to remember. No, you're not. Every one of us have gone out of meetings, whether it had been a good meeting. And just like we come out of a show. Gee, that was a good meeting. What do we do now? Let's go down and have some coffee. I know it's just human nature not to remember. But it's serious. If you're not doing well, you better try to remember what they said and what I identified with and what I hung on to. Because your mind is going to tell you you are not like them. And the little moments you can find where you can identify is that you hang on to that. So don't argue and listen and try to remember. Then the fourth big item, practice it. Do it. What you've heard, do it. Do it when nobody's looking, preferably. But if they are looking, do it anyway. Take the action. Change something. Go up and offer to put chairs away because somebody said that's a good idea. Put some money in the basket, even though I never did it because they don't. What are they going to do with the money anyway? What am I going to do but help give somebody a ride home? It's their pain in the ass. But find some little thing that you've heard and do it. Be quiet and listen and remember and do it. Maybe even to the point of thanking God for keeping me sober when I don't even believe in God. But do something that's working. Then the fifth one, and the capper, which is the best in salesmanship and the best in AA. The number one thing is number 5. Now teach it to somebody else. Because you will learn more about it in teaching it to someone else than you ever will in listening. Because now you've got to put it through your own system. And you've got to put your own spin on it. I have learned more about AA by helping people than I ever have by listening. Not because I didn't want to, but you don't really understand the program until you work with people. Because then you got to start. They're asking you questions, and you can't just say, uh-huh. You got to have an answer. You can always tell an inadequate sponsor. What about this? Utilize, don't analyze. Or because, that's why. That's better than nothing, I guess. But I'd rather have you stay a few pages ahead in the book and tell them an answer. But that's how you learn. And what happens is one day you begin to solidify that feeling. My God, I can stay sober. And once, little by little, things begin to take a turn for the better because you become reliable. After a while, people even begin to begrudgingly believe your promises. And little by little, you can get a job. You may have emotional explosions, get fired, but at least you can get another job. And you start to take a place in the life. And you start to feel better. And then comes the last critical moment in sobriety. Then you got to keep doing it after you feel better. I can't tell you how many tens and hundreds and thousands and hundreds of thousands of people have come through AA and lasted here till they got feeling better and then left. And they won't come back because they've tried AA, and that is what they're drunk. Just stop and think. This room was this full 13 years ago. And there are 5, 10 new people every week since then. There shouldn't be enough room in this meeting if they held at the Coliseum, for Christ's sake. But people are coming in this end, and there are all kinds of ways to go out that end. Not of them all get drunk. Some of them die. Some of them wander off. Some of them stay sober, proving they don't have to go to A anymore. They can stand pain. That's okay. That's a true story, I'll guarantee you. If you ever want to see him, wait till some old-timer gets drunk and dies, then go to the funeral. You'll see some old-timers come out of the woodwork for the first time in a long time, and they come to meetings for a little while, then they go stay home again. That happens again and again. I'm not trying to frighten you or scare you. I'm telling you why I stay active. I don't stay active because I want to help people. I don't stay active because I'm loving and kind and good. I stay active because that's the most comfortable way I've ever found to make it on a continuing basis. And I'll tell you this, if there were an easier, better way, I would be doing it. I'd be out of here in a New York minute. Because I am not one for self-sacrifice. I am a hedonist of the first water. This is the best, easiest way I know to go. And that's why if you're new to that, we're not trying to convince you of everything. If you don't make it, you'll be out that street drunk, and none of us will give a shit, because our lives will continue. But you will, and your life will go down the toilet, and you'll think, but I tried AA and it didn't work. I went to 10 meetings and it didn't work. Without just sitting here, a corny old phrase. Just like going to sit in a hen house and wondering how long it's going to take to lay eggs. You know, it's just sitting there isn't going to do it. Find somebody. Listen for somebody. Come up to somebody that seems to tell you with their eyes that AA works and say, will you be my sponsor? Will you help me? And then ask them what to do. And then do it. Eventually good things happen. I came to, much to my surprise, to believe in God after I was sober some time. I had always believed in God, but a hateful God. I came to believe in a loving God. I came to live in the world with some degree of help and hope and self-reliance. I was able to give up victimization. I very rarely, even once the great blue moon, I may have just a little trace of it. Oh, it wasn't my fault. But it is. Because AA teaches, most of us have had difficult things in our lives, and victimization perhaps, and been hurt a lot. But if you're ever going to be comfortable, you got to do this. You got to take actions here till one day you can stand up and say, that was all very sad, but that was then, and this is now. I'm not going to spend the rest of my life in the role of a neurotic teenager. I'm going to live like an adult in a world that I can live with some degree of dignity and self-reliance. And then you and I will find it really is all worthwhile. That AA is not such a strange foreign place after all. You're not as different as you fear. Something here works. It works for you. It works for me. If we just do it. And you'll be glad it does. Thank you.
Sorry to interrupt your viewing. Taper Dave here. Just wanted to take a second to ask you to like and subscribe to my channel. Let me know if you like what you're listening. I've got some very good talks here, and this one's a great one. Just curious, do you think this is better than Zoom? Tell me what you think. Okay, this is how I prepare my drone for launching. I like to do it inside the cab of my truck so I'm not standing outside in the weather. To install the joysticks for control, up and down, right and left, powered on. I have an Android phone that I use to connect it to the drone with. And it's actually controlled through the iPhone, through an app. Oops, wrong way. It's actually controlled through the iPhone, or through this Android phone, through the app. It's actually controlled through the Android phone, through an app, and you connect it through this short connection right here.
Remote control connected.
Remote control's connected. So I pull out the drone. I have to extend the legs long legs extended first, then the short legs. Remove the gimbal protector. Set that aside, then power it on one short burst, then one long burst. I lay it down. So I have to go to calibrate. So the drone's not connected yet. It shows you here as this drone gets disconnected, even though the remote's powered on. So the drone has to establish it's connected. So I go into the app to calibration mode. First I'll calibrate the remote controller. Start calibration. Out, in, out, in, up, down, and then this little wheel is to control the gimbal. So it's calibrated. Go to gimbal calibration, start calibration, and then it calibrates the gimbal. I don't know if that shows up. The gimbal's moving all over the place. Changes, you can see it on the video. And I'm calibrated to take off. It's acquired 7 satellites at the moment. There are 26 satellites up in the sky, which it has to acquire before you can take off. So it's connected. It's got enough satellites. This is white. I can go to press this little arrow button, swipe right to take off, and it would start the motors if I slid this to the right. But I'll wait till I get outside. Don't want to do it inside.